terms abuse of authority, unnecessary use of force, and police brutality have become turnkey phrases in our vocabulary. In the last few years, our cities have been shaken by violence. Agitators and some minority groups have cried that police brutality was the main cause for recent civil disorders. Whatever their motives, they're beginning to break down our police effectiveness. Officers today are literally handcuffed by the recent court decisions favoring alleged violations of rights. They've been a continuing pawn during the political chess games in order for candidates to win votes. And we have supported all these moves. But now, we're beginning to see the results. The heart of law enforcement, the patrolman, is harder to recruit now more than ever. And turnover within the departments is at an all-time high, 20%. Despite the restrictions and allegations against the cop, some young men from our cross-quoted section of the country want to belong. Why?
Chambers.
The hours are long, the pay is little, and their rewards a little more than criticism. 22-year-old Preston Chambers recently got out of the Navy, and like many fellow veterans, was at first confused by what his goal in life was. He had several jobs in just as many months before deciding to be a cop.
I got out of service in April, and I've had several jobs. Just looking for satisfaction in my job. Just looking for something that would leave me with a satisfied feeling of some kind of accomplishment when I went home at night.
David Robertson, another Vietnam veteran, looks at life a little more cautiously, but is a little more philosophical about his fears.
I guess as you get more into it, you kind of shove these things aside. But now I hesitate because here I am, a rookie. I'm not really trained or specialized in this field of policing yet.
What these two boys have yet to learn is limitless. What they have learned is invaluable. One of the first men Preston and Dave meet during their week of indoctrination is Officer E.H. Lyons, a veteran of 21 years on the force. He works the day watch with the Crime Prevention Bureau, an experimental liaison department between people and police. Lyons' beat is the high crime areas, in areas such as this where children play in the streets for lack of a proper playground. Every one of these youngsters lives in a potential breeding ground for a life of crime. Lyons knows this and understands it. He lives with their problems and is aware of their fears. One day his role might be that of a public protector.
She don't have anywhere to stay. She didn't then. He burned her house up.
Who saw him do it? Anybody see him do it?
Yeah, we seen him did.
You saw him do it?
Yeah, cause that night we had been out to the club, and when we come in, he was up there in her house, and I told her, I said, "Anne Mae, don't go up there." She said, "Well, I got to have somewhere with my children to stay." Her children, 5 children, was upstairs. And I said, "Anne Mae, don't go up there." And we went up there in the yard, and he had the door closed. My boyfriend wanted to go in the house.
More often than not, these citizens have no idea of what their rights to protection are, and it's Lyons' duty to help them.
This is the job we're assigned to do, to aid these people in any respect. Help them obtain warrants and help them understand what their problems are. If they run into obstacles out there about a warrant, we're supposed to assist them and advise them, even go so far as to take them down there in these hardship cases. This is a hardship case. There's a mother here with 2 or 3 children, don't know where to stay. House burnt out from under. She goes down there and try to obtain a warrant and don't know how to express herself, so we go down there with her and explain the situation to them and obtain a warrant for her.
He might be a guidance counselor.
Now, when your mother leaves you at home and some strange person come to your home and knock on the door, you shouldn't let a stranger into your house or meet him there.
Many times, Officer Lyons' role as a cop is to listen to problems of neighborhood groups such as this one regarding police protection.
What about how was this man killed?
Shot?
Shot?
Yes.
Did the people know who shot him up there?
I guess they did.
His next day may bring him to an EOA center.
We are wondering if in your spare time you would go down and make an investigation and check to see if this is true.
I'll check this out for you, Miss Jansen, shortly, and let you know as the results of my findings.
Thank you very much.
All right, then.
These people depend on Lyons, not only because he's a vital link to downtown, but he understands.
I was given a call to meet another officer, and the officer related to me that he had caught this young man sniffing glue and asked me would I make charge against him and place him in juvenile. And of course, in talking to the young man, he seemed pretty bright, and I asked him would he like to go back to school. He said yes, but he would like to have some type of employment. This young man who became interested in him as of yesterday wanted to drop out of school to get a job to help his mother and the family out. And we're trying to encourage him to continue his schooling.
We'll try to work him in, see.
And of course, the young man wanted to transfer in a high school nearer to his home. And I also agreed to that I would help him get his transfer if it's possible and talk with the principal there.
But be sure to get your official withdrawal from Bass. And when you come, since you live on Proctor, there won't be a problem in getting into school.
Lyons' watch may not deal in the spectacular, but it's more important than solving a crime. He's preventing one.
All the children that are age of school age, they attend school every day. They don't have to stay out to babysit with the smaller kids as they were yesterday.
Officer Lyons' job in the Crime Prevention Bureau is a very personal war. A war against things he knows about. Poverty, illiteracy, the lack of housing, and the lack of understanding. But is he winning it? Like any new department in the Atlanta police force, the battle is all uphill. Some critics feel the program is nothing more than a Mickey Mouse Corps or a Boy Scout troop. Others call it an overdue innovation. Whatever it is, it's at least the first step in a long procedure of learning for the rookies like Preston Chambers and David Robertson. Had we more teachers like E.H. Lyons, we'd have less criticism and a lot more understanding of the people's needs for police.
You also have to advise him that anything he does say can and will be used against him in a court of law. You also have to advise him that he has the right to consult with a lawyer and to have the lawyer present during the interrogation. And that if he
After a few weeks on the street with seasoned patrolmen from the Crime Prevention Bureau, the rookies like Dave and Preston are given a 30-hour basic police course by veteran police officer Lieutenant S.L. Salvant. It familiarizes the men with the laws, Supreme Court rulings, and city ordinances. It's pretty dull, but today more than ever, vital to a police career.
And again, it comes right back to you as a police officer as to how well you patrol and how aggressively you patrol.
The second phase in Dave and Preston's schooling is at the State Patrol Academy, where experts in various fields teach and demonstrate what a patrolman might be faced with during his watch.
That people are today more conscious of their rights than they ever have been before. And also, it is probably the population during this generation, these times, which is the best read and the best informed. And let me throw out to you now some figures with respect to the results of investigation by the FBI of allegations of police brutality. Remember now, in 1963, there were 1,376 allegations, violation of a federal law, for which, upon conviction, you could be sentenced to a federal penitentiary. Of 1,376, there were 6 convictions. In 1964, 1,592 complaints, 5 convictions. 1965, 1,787 complaints, 9 convictions. You use the same degree of performance in the ghetto as you do in the suburb. You use the same performance when you arrest the driver of a broken down hack as you would one who is driving a Cadillac.
Observation shows this bias all too evident, providing a base for anti-police charges, whether true or untrue. As the school continues, Dave and Preston begin to question constructively, how well equipped will they be?
I have a basic idea of what my duties are and everything, but along the way, I'm going to have to do research on my own and get a better idea of it.
A lot of times, you get to a situation where you got to do it, and it don't work just like you. We'll say the school said, well, you got to do it this way. Well, they should have spent more time on more different things and dwelling mainly on bleeding and artificial respiration. I think they could have used it a little more constructively. They spent, I think, an hour and a half or 2 hours on emergency childbirth. This is something that should have been, you make 1 in 1,000 births and a police officer might deliver the baby. But it's one of the things that if you have to do it, you better know how to do it right, or you're going to cost somebody their life.
I wouldn't actually come out and say that I'm qualified to really save a man's life, but I'm qualified to the point where I could be working to save his life until help comes.
You throw this shoulder, which is up, toward your target. But get squat down, make a small target, so if the guy's shooting at you, he has a smaller target to hit. And I just jam the gun right in his gut. Then I put my trigger finger on the trigger. 10-4.
John Langsfeld is an FBI agent who teaches firearms training, and he takes his job seriously. He worries whether or not he's getting the important outlines across to the young men. Do they understand the difference between logical action and an emotional reaction?
If I knew how to give a course in common sense, I'd be the richest guy in the world. But how do you teach a guy common sense? Common sense is something that you get through environment. There are 100 different factors involved. The thing is about the police officer, he's on the spot, and when something happens, he don't have time to call his sergeant or his captain or get his buddy who's got so-called common sense. He has to react to a certain situation spontaneously. For example, they'll always ask you the question, what kind of force can a person use? They'll always say to this answer to this question, what is necessary? I say I would add one more thing to that, reasonably necessary. What is reasonably necessary? And that's where this common sense and good judgment comes into play. Maybe that'll give you a better insight into some of the young officers' problems. And they take the men as they get experienced in the police department like detectives. They're like us. They become investigators, and they know how they're going to work a case and how to handle people. But these young officers, they're exposed to danger every day of the week.
Practical training in the use of their weapon is what these men want to get across to the rookie. Don't use it unless it's a matter of life and death, and how to use it when that time ever comes up.
I know, personally speaking for myself, I could have used more time out there. I got what they considered a passing grade. In fact, I got a little better than what they consider a passing score, but I still say it's a lot different laying there on the ground shooting at a still target than just ducking around an alley trying to shoot at somebody. Well, the thoughts that run through your mind is if I shoot that man, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to take his life away from him. He's going to be dead, and I want to be alive. Was I justified in shooting him? Was he wrong? And the tension that's on you just from these thoughts that are going through your mind are enough to, in some respects, cause you to fall completely apart, and other people to lose whatever control they might have had, and some people might not be affected by it at all.
Seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and feeling. And we depend upon it. And these are the things that tell us that what is in an area or what's at the crime scene, and these are the things that we can testify to. Then, when we have testified to this, then the expert from the laboratory can tell you approximately how long since the gun was fired, also whether or not this gun fired these 2 cartridge cases. So, gentlemen, everything must prove itself.
You have the central nervous system depressants, the central nervous system stimulants, and the hallucinogenic drugs, which includes marijuana. Now, one of these 3 groups is what you would call a truly addicting type drug. Now, this is a drug that has both a mental, you would build up both a mental and a physical dependency. In other words, your mind would tell you that you want to take it. And not only that, if you don't, your body will be telling you that you want to take it because you would be going through a withdrawal, and it's very uncomfortable. Now, your central nervous system depressants, you would develop both a mental and a physical dependency. This includes the morphine, the heroin, and also the barbiturates. If these drugs are taken over a period of time, your body will build up a tolerance, and you will build up a physical dependency because your body will tell you that you need this drug. Now, the central nervous system stimulants, you can develop a mental dependency. Your mind will tell you that you want to take it. However, if you do not take it, you will not go through any physical withdrawal. With your hallucinogenic drugs, you will have a mental dependency. If you do not take it, you will not have withdrawal.
If I walked into an apartment right now and it was filled with smoke from marijuana, I would say there'd be a 50-50 chance that I would find it. I would hate to think that I was going to make an arrest and take somebody's freedom away from them just because I thought that I smelled marijuana.
It has been a real pleasure having you as our guest these past 2 weeks. And we are hopeful that the material presented during these 2 weeks will be beneficial to you in getting you off to a good start in your law enforcement career. I want to commend each of you for successfully completing this program, and it's a real pleasure for me now to award each of you your certificate. If you will come forward as your name is called, I will award your certificate. Preston A. Chambers, Jr.
Although David and Preston received 2 weeks of intensive training, they both felt the need for more time.
David R. Robertson.
But time is a commodity too expensive for the Atlanta police. They needed the rookies on the street. But what is the most practical way for fellows like Dave and Preston to learn how to be efficient cops?
I believe the most practical of it is being on the street, riding with a guy. I mean, you can sit a guy into a room, have all these papers and books in front of him. He might be able to grasp a hold of reading and stuff like that, can go through that with no trouble at all. But then when it comes to the actual practical part of it, they're not able to. And so I've actually, you might say, have learned more by going out, riding with these guys, seeing how they handle these situations that come up with the wife beating, where you get there and here's a woman all black and blue, and the man's been beating her since early morning, and see how he handles that, or how he handles a drunk, or whatever the situation might come up. And then from what you have learned through him, along with what you've learned in the academy, you combine the two along with your beliefs, and you come up to be your own policeman.
To be your own policeman, though, you have to commit yourself, have confidence in knowing what to do.
I think sometimes that a person won't make an arrest because of a feeling of uncertainty in their own self. I know it's a heck of a thing when you're thinking about, now I'm fixing to take that man's freedom away from him, take him away from his family, take him away from his friends, his job, and everything else. I'm going to put this man in confinement, take everything away from him that he has. Am I right? Am I absolutely sure that what I'm doing is right? That's a big responsibility.
Knowing when you're right or wrong takes experience, something these two rookies haven't got as yet. But they do see examples of proper performance by officers every day.
Down the street, which was off the beat from where we were supposed to be, down at that bar, the colored guy gets shot in the stomach with a .38. That was a good example. Policeman got there, seen what the situation was, seen that he was bleeding bad. You put him a pressure bandage on over the gunshot wound, slowed down the bleeding enough, what you might say, he did save that guy's life. If not, he would have bled to death right there.
After a few weeks, this learning by doing tactic begins to pay off. and they start to realize their worth as police officers.
We arrested a man for making an obscene phone call because the facts were there that he did it. We had probable cause to believe that he was guilty of that crime. He was there. He was identified over the phone by the woman. They traced the line and everything, and he made no attempt to deny it.
On this morning watch, Preston's partner was Officer Robert Peppers, a 15-year veteran. He claimed he wouldn't trade places with a rookie for anything. Too many obstacles working against today's law enforcement. But the lawbreaker doesn't change.
We were there, I got out and I checked the building. And I got back in the car, and 2 minutes after I got back in the car, we were called completely to the other side of the beat. When we got to the other side of the beat, we were notified. The people said, we didn't call you. We didn't call for the police. Well, we went right straight back to where we were and got back, and then about an hour later, as soon as they opened up, they reported a burglary. Now, this was not our fault. Chances are we caught the man in there and scared him. I believe to the day I died that the man was in there when we were there, and he called.
And sometimes their suspicions prove unfounded. This 2-day abandoned auto turned out to be nothing more than a drunk driver leaving his car, then forgetting where he left it. But tonight, Preston's watch ends on a lighter note. As these two rookies gain more information about their role as cops, more questions enter their minds. More questions than can be answered. Like the number of police available to protect the citizen.
It was ridiculous, the ratio between the people to be protected to the people to protect them.
That ratio is ridiculous. By our figures, there's one officer for every 1,500 persons in Atlanta. Astounding as those figures are, in some quarters, that's a very conservative estimate. One of Dave's officers recently remarked, if Atlantans knew how little police protection they did have because of this lack of manpower, they'd be scared to death. But of the officers that do belong, and the new men that want to belong to the force, they readily answer the critics why they belong.
I'm not qualified to say that, really, but I do see a need for more policemen. And I've had a couple of people talk to me. They said, how come you joined the police force? I come up and I told them, I don't know. I don't know, I guess you have to be an idiot to want to go out, you might say more or less, looking for trouble.
The type of job is a challenge every day. It's different. You don't ever face two situations exactly alike. And for the 25 people that will call you a pig, the one who says thank you for helping you makes it worth it.
I had a guy the other day come up on the street and he asked me, he says, well, what do you think about police brutality? I asked him, I said, now what if you was in my uniform and you're making the pay that I make, which isn't really the best in the world? And you come up and you got this drunk. He's being abusive. And he spits that in your face. I said, now what are you going to do? He said, well, I'm going to knock hell out of it. And right there, he answered his own question.
Unfortunately, the answers aren't that simple. But one question is, how can the police carry out their duties to protect the citizenry, enforce law and order, and at the same time avoid the charges and allegations hurled against them? They're damned if they do, and damned if they don't. FBI agent John Langsfeld comes up with part of the answer, though.
I don't know, frankly, how they do it, how they hire these boys for what they pay them. I don't know how they do it. They must want to, a lot of them must want to be dedicated to law enforcement, just like teachers or nurses. My wife's a nurse. So there's something more, some desire to be a servant.
David and Preston's class will complete their formal training with 3 weeks of city police school. Once on their own, some of these young men will become lackadaisical or uncaring, and some others overzealous and too suspicious. But they're all we've got.